Hey, and thank you for clicking play. This video is ADF to Amiga floppy disks via RS232/Null Modem cable and done on request by Mike, done for Mike from the Perth Amiga Users Group. Everything you can see here except the controller for my TV is the gear you will need, and we'll take a closer look at that next. Okay, so other than the obvious, which is a Commodore Amiga and a PC, you're going to need an RS232 Null Modem cable. So what this is it's a comms cable, not a parallel cable, and it essentially fools two machines into thinking they are dialed up into each other. So it's a crossover cable, not a straight cable. And this is the wrong type of cable because this one has 9-pin D sockets. Really what you want to try and look for is one with at least one end, a 25 pin. You can buy them, and you can still buy these. I bought this brand new from Altronics. You can get them from JCar. In your country or region, there'll be a place that still sells these, or obviously online. And you can get them where they actually branch off and they will have a D25 and a D9, and that's very handy because often on the PC side, you'll end up with a D9, but what you need for the Amiga end is a D25 female, always female, okay? So how do I make this one work? Well, I made myself, and again, you can buy them separately. If you don't get a dual head cable, you just need to make an adapter. So that's what I've just sort of mapped, you know, so from a D9 male to a D25 female, and then I can plug that in like that, or like that. There we go. Easy peasy. And I made this one myself. For the PC end, if you do find a PC with a COM port, then great. Generally, it will be a D9. However, these days, that's very rare. So what you're probably going to want is, if you're using a modern PC, which I'm not going to, is an adapter like this. They are not just a cable with pins, it's actually an adapter, and they require a driver. And so that at the other end obviously has USB. So you may need one of those as well. And again, you can get these quite cheaply online. Just be careful, some of them, including this one, do not work with Windows 10. And in fact, to make this work at all, I actually had to downgrade the driver to actually get any joy out of it. It worked, but it would fail at the end of the copying. The copy still worked, but it meant I had to reboot Amiga Explorer every single time I wrote a disk, which is frustrating, which is why I'm going to use my older PC. Other things you're going to need: workbench. Then you're going to need at least 2 other disks. Don't be confused by the fact that these are PC disks. That's just me. These are Amiga disks, okay? One is going to have, we're going to copy Amiga Explorer, the Amiga version of it, onto one of these. And the other is obviously to copy our first ADF as an example. So the other thing you're going to need is Amiga Explorer. That is provided by Cloanto. It comes as part of Amiga Forever. However, they've also made it freely available from their website. So the first step is connecting our machines. And you're going to want your Commodore Amiga. And obviously on the back of the Amiga, make sure you plug things in the right place. What we've got here is obviously your RGB video, which is where, for me, my modulator plugs in. You've got your parallel port. It's not going to be able to plug in there anyway because it's the wrong polarity, wrong male versus female. And the one you're actually looking for is your serial port, which is this one here, not your disk drive port, which is a D23 anyway. So that's a bit of a heads up for if you've bought the wrong cable. If you're finding it's fitting into the parallel port, well, it's definitely the wrong cable. You're probably playing with a printer cable. So very simply, your D25 female is going to go into the serial port on the back of your Amiga. Like so. Similarly, on the back of your PC, well, first and foremost, as most of you will be probably using a modern PC, hoping you've already installed the driver for your adapter, I would do that first. Plug in your USB adapter to the other end of the RS232 cable. And make sure there is the other end of the RS232 cable. If you're using a dual head, don't plug it into the D9 of the same end. Has to be the opposite end. Hopefully that's obvious. And then obviously plug in your USB cable, which never goes in right the first way around. For me though, because I get more stability out of just going direct comms, and because I have the luxury of doing that on this Windows XP PC, I'm just going to be plugging my D9 female into my D9 male socket there, and I'm good to go. Okay, so with both machines connected up together, what you're going to want to do is fire up your PC, obviously, fire up your Amiga into Workbench, and then the next step is essentially installing and configuring Amiga Explorer on the PC, which in turn will install Amiga Explorer over onto your Amiga, and you really do just need to follow the prompts that Amiga Explorer gives you. The tutorial is in the software itself, so this video could simply be as short as download and install Amiga Explorer, because everything else is explained so long as you are using the right cable and you follow the instructions carefully. Okay, so on the PC, under Device Manager, you'll see that I've got a COM port here because this machine has a COM port. So just a note that if you're using a USB adapter, you may have to go into your Device Manager under Windows 10 and actually tell it to act as a COM port, and make note of the COM port name that it is going to be using. Okay, because my Amiga Explorer is already set up, I can mimic your first time running it, or do this when the first time you run it. I can recreate that by right-clicking and going Setup. And it throws me into the procedure for setting Amiga Explorer up for the first time, so let's walk through it. This setup procedure copies the required Amiga Explorer installation files to the Amiga computer connected via a Null Modem cable, so it tells you what to do. If you have already configured the Amiga Explorer connection settings on this computer, you need to indicate the COM port, press OK to proceed, otherwise press cancel. So it's telling us what kind of cable. Let's click OK. The setup procedure needs to take a different action depending on your Amiga operating system. Is the Amiga running Workbench version 2 or higher? Grey. If the Amiga was booted with 1.2 or 1.3, blue Workbench, please select no. So that's what we're going to do. Obviously, you would pick the one relevant to you. Please make sure that the Amiga serial preferences are set to 19200 baud rate, buffer size 4096, read bits 8, write bits 8, stop bits 1, parity none, RTS, CTS handshake. So this is what we have to set up on the Amiga. So let's move over to the Amiga and get that done. So on the Amiga, we need to go into Workbench, so the Workbench disk is still in there. We need to go into Preferences. And we need to configure the serial, which has the telephone icon on this version of Workbench. Okay, so let's configure this using the settings that I'm reading off the other screen. Baud rate should be 19200. Nope, there we go, 19200. Buffer size 4096. Read bits 8, which is what's selected. Write bits 8, which is what's selected. Stop bits 1, which is what's selected. Parity none. And handshaking, we need to change that to RTS, CTS. And then I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to click Use. Now, what you might want to do is, if you're using a backup of your Workbench disk, and I highly recommend only doing this on a backup, turn off write protection and actually save these settings if you're going to be doing this frequently. I actually have another copy of Workbench in which I've done exactly that. Today I'm just going to click Use rather than Save, because this is my original Workbench disk. Let's go back over to the PC. the Amiga is ready to go. Once we've set these parameters up, and it's very important that we do set them up first on the Amiga before we proceed here, we can now click OK. And then it's given us a shell command to type in on the Amiga, which I'll read out. We have to type in, including the word type, capitals SER colon space 2 as in TO space capital RAM colon setup with a capital S. So on the Amiga, I'm going to come out of preferences. I'm going to open a shell. And as instructed, I'm going to exactly type SER colon 2 RAM colon setup, and I'm going to click enter, and then nothing appears to happen, and that's fine. So on the PC it does tell us to press return on the Amiga and then select OK in this message window. Do not press any other key or move the mouse on the Amiga until the next message is displayed. So let's click OK. And then what we've got is Amiga Explorer is actually copying setup onto the Amiga itself. If we look at the Amiga, both the Amiga screen and the Amiga machine are doing nothing because it's not copying this to the disk, it's copying this to RAM. Okay. In the Amiga shell window, press Ctrl and C, hold down the Control key and press C. Nothing will appear to happen on the Amiga side, which is normal. After pressing the Ctrl C button side, select OK in this message window. We're going to hold Ctrl and press C. And it does warn us that nothing will happen on the Amiga, and sure enough, nothing has happened on the Amiga. But what we are now instructed to do is press OK on this prompt. If the system and cable are configured and working properly, the Amiga shell will display break followed by a command prompt. And sure enough, the two are talking. Break followed by a command prompt. What we're told to do next on the PC, in the same Amiga shell window, enter RAM colon setup. So that's what I'm going to do. In the shell, RAM colon setup, and press return on the Amiga. And then click OK in this window. And again, we're getting a copy across from the PC to the Amiga, and what it's copying across is Amiga Explorer. And it's copying it into RAM disk. Now note, this step, all these steps that I'm doing now, this is only the setup procedure. Once you've done this, and this is why I said to have a disk ready, you can store the Amiga Explorer on a floppy disk on your Amiga, and you don't have to go through this setup again. Once it's set up, it's done, and I'll show you how we do that. Right, so this message now reads, congratulations, Amiga Explorer has been successfully copied to the RAM disk volume of your Amiga. You can now drag and drop AExplorer icon to a floppy or hard disk location. Double click on AExplorer to start or stop the software. So I'm going to click OK to that. And for the setup procedure, the PC side is done. Let's go and have a look at what we've got on the Amiga. So now on the Amiga, what I've got in the RAM disk is Amiga Explorer. And while there is a README text, we don't really need that. We just need Amiga Explorer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to insert the first of my floppy disks. And this one will become my Amiga Explorer disk. And I'm just going to pop that in. Okay, so the Amiga disk, I'm just going to rename that new disk. Rename, and I'm going to call that AExplorer. Just through choice. Okay, so now obviously what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my RAM disk. I'm going to open Amiga Explorer. Okay, and I'm going to make a copy of that onto there. Okay, now why have I done that? I've done that so that next time I do this, like I said, the PC side for Amiga Explorer is now set up. That's done. The Amiga, all I need to do next time I boot up is boot up into Workbench, make sure my serial connection settings are correct as per the instructions we were given before. And you can double check that on the PC by right clicking on Amiga Explorer and going Properties, and it will tell you what they should be set to. But like I said, I do suggest you maybe make a backup of your Workbench disk and actually save those preferences so that you don't have to tinker with them every time. And then once Workbench is loaded, all you need to do is put in your Amiga Explorer disk, and then we can load Amiga Explorer from the disk. Okay, so to copy an ADF onto a floppy disk, so an ADF from PC onto a floppy disk with everything connected, the PC's already set up. Let's just have a look at what I would do just to show you that you don't have to re-go through that Amiga side of setup if you've made that Amiga Explorer disk as I did before. You would just be able to pop in, once Workbench is loaded, pop in your Amiga Explorer floppy disk. Open up your disk and copy the Amiga Explorer program into RAM disk. Now I don't need to do that because it's already in RAM disk, but that's what I would do. That then leaves the floppy drive free to do the copying procedure. So I would then eject my Amiga Explorer floppy disk, and what I'm going to put in now is the first disk that I want to write an ADF to. So I'm going to pop in a blank floppy. Now this floppy is actually PC formatted. So it's going to come up as DF0 bad, I think. DF0 bad, there we go. I could initialize it, but I actually don't need to. What we need to do before we touch the PC side is we need to actually get Amiga Explorer running. So as part of my procedure, I would actually go in and just make sure my board settings are correct, but we've already been through the setup of that. So let's go into RAM disk. And we were going to run Amiga Explorer, which is asking for our Workbench disk. I'm going to eject Workbench again. So actually, sorry, you should run that RAM disk before you swap disks. So I've now put in the blank disk that I'm going to be writing to. That's going to show up as DFO bad. Let's jump over to the PC. Okay, so on the PC this time, what we're going to do is we're going to run Amiga Explorer. And straight away it's happy. And what you'll see here is this is actually showing me the Amiga. I've got RAM disk, I've got DF0, I've got kick ROM, and I've got a DF0 ADF. So all I need to do is actually grab an ADF, so I've got dpaint here, and drag it over onto df0.adf. And what you'll see is you get a copy window. What you'll also notice is the Amiga screen is doing nothing. However, the Amiga disk drive is busy chugging away in the corner there. And you'll hear it ticking away, and when it is finished, that dialog will simply disappear. Okay, it has 10 Microsoft seconds, and these has been Microsoft seconds and minutes, so it's a little bit longer. The drive is still ticking away. There we go. It now reports 5 seconds. My screensaver did kick in, as you can see, and then sort of wrecked one of the windows, but that's fine. It's an old machine. 5 seconds remaining. All the green dots are full on the progress bar, and that's finished. You hear a final chunk from the Amiga, and the Amiga is done. And now you'll notice what did say DF0 bad now says dpaint, and if I click into that, you can hear it reading from the disk and see it chugging from the disk, and there we go. We have restored a copy of dpaint. That ADF is a legitimate copy of mine, a legitimate backup of my original dpaint disk. So, speaking of which, let's do the reverse. Let's see how you would create an ADF from a legitimate Amiga floppy disk, and this won't copy a copy protected disk. So just so you're aware of that, but it is a great way, if you've got your original media, especially your copy of Workbench and associated disks, it's a great way of backing those up to ADF for your own safekeeping. Let's have a look. Okay, so if I wanted to, for example, make a copy of my original Workbench disk, make a backup of the ADF, I'm going to put this into, and this won't copy protected disks, as in copy protected, not write protected. I'm talking about copy protection. It's not an image copy. You're going to need to use a grease weasel for that. That's a whole different ball game that I haven't even got into yet. So Workbench disk is in there. So on the PC, with making sure the disk that we want to copy is in the machine, all we need to do is in Amiga Explorer, let's just refresh the view to make sure we're looking at the right things. And you'll notice here, so in Amiga Explorer, it says, and I'll read it for you in case that text is too small, Workbench 1.3 ADF. So it's seeing what we've got in the floppy drive. The floppy drive is actually listed there, but it's this ADF we're interested in. And all I need to do is copy it onto a location on the computer. So for ease of making this video, I'm just going to drag Workbench ADF onto the desktop here. I could copy it into any folder, and we're going to get the same thing. So we get the copy icon. It says Workbench 1.3 ADF, because that's what I'm choosing to make a backup of. The progress bar starts copying across. I can see it's reading from the drive. So before it was writing to the drive when we were copying to the drive. This time we're copying from the drive, so it's reading, and it's reading across to the PC. Obviously, we won't be able to run this file once it's copied to PC, but we could run it in Amiga forever. So, or WinUAE, which I don't have installed on this. So you could do that. So there we go. I hope you found that useful. I don't think this is a replacement for using a GoTech. You could quite easily set up an external GoTech and just do it that way using Xcopy. But if you don't have a GoTech, and you like to be pushing original media in and out of a disk drive, which is what I like doing, it's not for everybody, then this is how you can copy across from a PC ADF files and basically turn them into Amiga floppy disks. And there it is, finished. The ADF is on the desktop.